In this country, you have a, quote, legalized second class. When I say legalized, I don't mean they have papers. There is one class of people, and then there's another class. The other class is an underclass, and it's kind of set in stone. Everyone else has papers. And those people are a significant part of the economy. You go to the Midwest, and you see upbeat kids employed behind registers at business, you know. I don't see that so much in LA.
Well, thank you, Arslan, for showing up and matching me today. I'm glad we both got the memo of white shirts for today's podcast. First things first, you share some photos that you want your hair to be like a little bit more controlled, which is right now we're kind of like in a wild professor mode. And so
it's windy outside.
It is. And so we discussed about keeping the top and front probably a little bit longer, but taking down this so it doesn't feel too like mad scientist, right? And you're not a scientist and you're not mad because you are an immigration attorney, right?
That's right.
It's amazing you have hair that you haven't pulled it all the way out. I had a general doctor when I was younger, and he was like, from here to here, he had no hair, right? And I was like, so what was it like going through medical school? He goes, well, my part wasn't always this big before medical school. And I was like, that's clever. My part wasn't always as big. Like he still hasn't given into the idea that he's actually bald. I thought it was just really funny.
I'm sure some of these grays, if not most of them, are attributable to the occupation. So.
Oh, okay. So we talked about age earlier, and you guessed me like 10 years younger. Thank you, by the way. Some people go, what's your secret? I go, well, I didn't go to college, so I didn't have to worry about writing midterm papers or stressing out how to pay like $300,000 of debt back.
Good Lord.
I paid, I think, maybe $5,000 for my cosmetology school, and my ROI on cosmetology is way higher. You spend $5,000 for school, and you can easily make several hundreds and thousands of dollars. So, yeah.
That's great.
It's great. Yeah, and I didn't have to worry about getting grays in the process.
If more people could do that.
I think we're going to have to with AI going on.
Yeah.
By the way, so you're an immigration attorney.
Yep.
Can I start cutting hair?
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right, cool. Let me put the cape on you.
Yeah.
Let's go through this. You are an immigration attorney, which I don't know the first thing about immigration.
That's
one,
great.
because I've not had to immigrate. Nobody in my immediate family has had to go through this. I've had clients who've had to become either green card or U.S. citizens from usually Western Europe, like Germany, England, Ireland, Italy, France, even Canadians, right? I don't know much about it. And since immigration is a hot button topic every 4 years when there's a presidential election, I feel that immigration conversation is it's not an every 4 year conversation. At least it doesn't feel like right now in the news media. It feels like it's an every news cycle is happening. And I feel that there's a lot of opinions. And I think a lot of what I hear is based in emotion. This is just from what I hear people talk about. And what I wanted to get from you is I wanted to understand the laws, the policy, the things that are actually going on. Like what's going on? What are we getting right as a country? What are we getting wrong as a country? If you could do the Thanos snap and have everything just go the way you'd want, like what is Arslan's utopia for immigration policy? I would love to know those things because I've had clients who are lawyers. I learned a ton about criminal defense from having a client, and I mean, he married my wife and I, so it was very close. I understand that stuff, but this is completely eludes me. So you have the floor.
Do I do the Thanos snap now, or do I give the backdrop?
You can do whatever you want, man. I don't care. Go in any order. Whatever you think. If your Thanos snap helps explain what's right and wrong, I don't care. Whatever is going to be whatever way is the best to explain it, man. Because I don't know. I know zero. Other than that, we have clearly, it sounds like we have an immigration problem in America, and clearly no one has a solution. Am I wrong on that?
I think, no one seems to be offering good solutions. I think that a good immigration policy is one that, and it's the parts that we may be getting right, is draws attracted skilled talent. And with regard to work visas, over here, the fact that we are a draw as a society, and talent comes here if we can not push away that talent.
Okay.
If we can be a magnet for that, and if those people can be skillfully and efficiently processed in an interview and application system that's not so burdensome and so lengthy, then that would be good. The application process and the interview process, it's a bit onerous. It's not as efficient as it could be, and
that's what I've heard from clients who've like had to like their spouse may be from another country and they were here on a work visa, but now they're going to have kids and they know they're not going to be moving to Australia where the wife is from. It appeared that it's a very costly, lengthy process, and it feels like if you don't have the startup capital to engage in that proper channel process, it is even harder. Am I wrong on that assumption?
Sometimes all the money in the world won't speed up the process, like the marriage process.
Okay.
It's that can be rather lengthy and it can inhibit travel. So if you're here and you put in the application, your foreign national spouse is not going anywhere for
a couple of years.
Well, maybe at least 6 months, probably longer. And much longer. And if you marry someone abroad and you immigrate them while they're living abroad, they're not coming in for, most times for over a year. So, and they're not really visiting in that time either.
Okay.
So because you're an intending immigrant, you've shown your cards to the U.S. government. So you're kind of staying put. This is not true of every instance, but this is the general.
Could you say that like when you have enough people game the system and take advantage of it, it really kind of like fucks over everybody else, right?
I think that so much of the system is intent on preventing fraud that it really it detracts from what could be an amazing system.
Okay.
It detracts from the system it is a fraud based, in my view of things.
Oh, so you feel there's a lot more fraud than...
I feel as though the system is in place to the heavy focus of the system is to prevent fraud. So if that is the case, then it will get bogged down. Is there a lot of fraud? I don't, it's hard to say. Obviously there's some, but a lot of it's probably prevented.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the
depends on the category. So.
Okay. And so like just because it sounds like, let's just like take fraud for the example, right? Like people are like fraudulently lying that they're getting married, so that way they can. I mean, that was always a joke.
That's all. Yeah.
That was a joke. Oh, just get married and you get that. Clearly that that exists for a reason to prevent the fraud. It happened enough times where people probably said, oh, we need to maybe slow down this channel of gaining immigration. If it's slowing things down and it's being more thorough, then the guardrails have a reason to be in place.
That's right.
So even though like maybe people think it's ridiculous when they're personally going through it, it's also to prevent other people who are trying to take advantage of the system. So is it like one of those unnecessarily necessary rules because of human nature of like self-preservation and greed? Like, well, I want this for me and I don't give a fuck about the other person.
I think that it's good for society that we don't promote that fraud and that we prevent it. I think that if we could have a bureaucratic system in place that doesn't get bogged down in processing times overall, so that they're way, we want those to be more reasonable. So, I think it's a good thing that we don't have marriage fraud based green cards. I think that it's how we go about doing that.
Yeah.
So,
is there a particular area of immigration as an immigration attorney that you focus on? Are you more on like your normal, like, hey, I'm here, I've done things the proper way? Is it a little bit more advocacy work that you're advocating for people who maybe come here for political or religious asylum? Is this like the hot topic of H-1B1 visas? Like I just hear clips.
yeah.
I have no fucking clue.
Thank you. So I do family-based immigration, the marriage green cards, the mom and dad coming over, the the siblings and that kind of stuff. The family base is probably the largest allotment of who gets to come in. Mm-hmm. And I also do work visas, employer visas. I did start, so that's the H-1Bs, the O-1s, all the, what.
Aren't those $100,000 now?
If you're out of the country, there's, at the moment, there is $100,000.
That's insane.
It went from,
Would it go from like $10,000 to $100,000?
Well, let's just say it's probably almost 100 times increase in governmental fees. So, yeah. I mean, there's a whole policy there of a lot of the administration doesn't like there's parts of the administration that just doesn't like large swaths of the existing immigration system in general. So anything they can do to try to slow it down or bottleneck it or limit it. But then you have pushback from the minute these things are announced, you have pushback, particularly I would even say in the Republican community, senators and business people that say, this is not we can't have this. And so it's not as, there's a lot of pushback on the current administration from even
and we're talking about a Republican administration.
Yeah.
So that way, if somebody watches this like 7 years from now,
okay, good.
They'll be like, what administration? So we're in a Trump administration.
Yeah.
And that right now, Republican administration, Republicans are kind of like in control of all the houses of government. And so what you're saying is that even on a state and local level, even the Republican Party is not 100% on board with a lot of the administration's current policies.
Yeah,
summarizing that correctly?
No way.
Okay, cool.
I think that if they had their way with what they wanted to with the $100,000 H-1B fee, it would have been across the board, even change of status. People who live here and are students in the U.S., they would be subject to it.
Oh.
You already. And so I think that there must have been enough pushback from business people, and others that it in the ensuing days that it was limited. So I think across the board there's a lot of even with regard to migrant workers and people who unauthorized immigrants working in certain sectors of the economy that they weren't subject to ICE raids and deportations the way that they could have been, because there was pushback from those business sectors.
Okay.
Saying you'll destroy us. And, I think that's logical to assume even if one didn't read about it. So. Yeah,
I mean, I grew up in a border state. I grew up in California. So like the idea of, unauthorized immigration, when I grew up, it was called illegal immigration. What's the change of vernacular on this? Like I grew up, people were homeless. Now they're unhoused. Is it just changing the chairs on the Titanic? Like we're just coming up with a new way to describe the same thing that feels less potentially offensive to individuals?
I think that's it. I think people would
I'm literally trying to understand this because I'm like, well, if they came here and they didn't go through the proper channels logically, and there's rules in place and these rules are laws, and you don't abide by these rules, you would be breaking the law, which would mean you committed an illegal action. Like if you're going fast in a 25-mile-an-hour zone and you're going 50 miles an hour, you broke a speeding law, right? So you committed an illegal maneuver in your car. And depending on how fast you go over the speed limit, it changes the severity of the punishment, right? Like you can get a ticket where you have to pay a fine, and if it's a little bit more, you get your license taken away because you went so many miles over the speed limit, right?
Yes.
We're not changing the rules for those. We're changing the things that deal with people's emotional connection connection to how that makes them feel? Like, and I'm trying to understand this.
I think you presented one side of it very well, and that I think that
this is real quick. That's the side that I'm trying to like understand it, because like I grew up with it being one word, and now it's another word. I'm trying to figure out why did the change happen?
I think that's great and articulate. I think another side might say, well, look, if you use the word illegal instead of unauthorized, then it brings a negativity, to the whole populace, and it further demeans them and subjects them to more discrimination, let's say, as if they don't have enough. But and then and a more lawyerly speak, would offer, look, there's I'm not quite clear on what's happened in the last year on this, but for the longest time, in my understanding, is that it's actually not a criminal violation to enter the country without papers. It's a civil infraction, which is why they're not in criminal court. So my understanding was that if you made it a law and you put them in criminal court, they are to be provided an attorney, because that's what happens in criminal proceedings. So if you keep it a civil infraction and you charge them that way, you cite them that way, then it's a different process. So
is that like a state or federal?
That's a federal. It's a purely a federal thing. So technically it may still not be unless something's changed that I'm not aware of in the last year. I don't believe it's a criminal. There might be things that were imposed in the last year, but I'm not aware of them. I used to practice much more asylum and deportation and those things. When I first got into this, that's why I got into this.
Because you wanted to, like...
I was doing other fields of law, and I didn't feel, let's just say I didn't feel great about anything in particular. I'm a musician and an artist, and so I have a gauge, a meter for what's impassioned and what feels authentic.
Yeah.
And I was in certain fields and in certain arenas of real estate and administrative law in New York City. I was like, this is far afield from anything I'm doing in music, in terms of heart, things.
Yeah, totally.
So I took a look at immigration. I was like, wow, this asylum thing, these people's stories, this and that, it's like this feels, I'm connecting and I want to do this.
Yeah.
So I got into that, and that's who I was helping in the first 6 years. Largely, I was doing those asylum, and Obama was president, and I was doing the asylum stuff and the deport. I was driving around in California to the detention centers.
Oh wow!
Not that much, but enough to understand that those are not nice places.
I feel like you don't want those to be like a nice place, because you don't want people to like, oh well, what's the worst? I go to this, really rundown resort called the detention center. I mean, I imagine that's the reason why like people go like, I've had friends who are felons. I have friends who've served in state prison, and they're like, it was good for me because they knew the guards. They knew who those people were.
I hope I don't get just butchered for, I meant it in this way, if I could clarify. I meant it's not a nice place for a person in a suit to visit. It didn't look, and this, I'm not saying this is true now, it didn't look so bad for the inmate compared to, I've never visited like a state penitentiary, like a criminal,
Yeah.
I assume that would be much, like I wasn't scared of anybody, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When I went to like, what was then Lancaster or the next
high desert.
Yeah. So it was like, it looked like it was well run and whatever. I'm just saying it's a place of high security, and DHS or ICE or whoever was there, it's not their job to, give you coffee and tea. They have a certain disposition, and, it's like, it's not like me coming and getting this haircut with all the smiles and the niceties. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's just like, it's a tense place to be, it's not so relaxed. That's all,
Okay.
And that's not a complaint. That's a reality, and after you, I'll leave it at that, you know.
I was just curious because I've actually never been in.
They might,
thankfully.
yeah.
I like I said, I just have friends that I've known who've done that. You know, I for me, every time I think of prison, I just keep thinking of Shawshank Redemption. You know, like that was my earliest memory of like really understanding like how awful prison could be was that movie.
Yeah.
And I don't ever want to know how true it really is.
Without comment to how the conditions might be over the last 8 years, with regard to this being so much in the news, you know, what I saw in the high desert in California was nothing that I didn't have any complaints like that from my clients.
Okay.
You know, I'm sure it may be different now. There's been surges and this and that, but you know, that's not my field of practice now, and I'm sure that there's much less professionally run facilities.
Yeah. So how'd you go from California to Texas?
So, during COVID, I took a break, and I've been doing immigration law for 16 years.
Wow.
In California, and I wanted to try something new and get a different perspective. And a lot of my friends, professionals, moved to Austin.
Okay.
So yeah.
And they moved because of California, the entire climate changed pretty much overnight because of COVID.
Yeah.
My wife and I and our family, we moved here in February of 2020.
Yeah.
And then a month later.
From?
California.
Okay.
From Orange County.
Okay, good.
So we moved here. We're like, oh, we're going to do all this. And then boom, like you couldn't go anywhere. And it was just crazy because I tell everybody like COVID restrictions were like 8 weeks here in Texas.
Yeah.
It was almost 2 years, depending on where you were in California. If you were in Orange County, they were like, screw you, Gavin Newsom. We're not going to listen to anything. And then LA was really strict, and like San Francisco area seemed even crazier restrictions in LA. I was in LA with some friends, and they were members of these like exclusive private bars. Like well-known, like fancy, swanky things. Man, I know at that time, if you went into anywhere in LA that served certain places, it was not unusual to have to like show your vaccine passport and all this. And you would walk in and no one was even working wearing any of the proper gear of California. Yeah. It was so crazy to kind of like see like the tale of two cities, the haves and have-nots. Like if you had enough money and access, you could live your normal life in LA. So when people say like, you couldn't do anything, I'm like, I was around people who were doing everything.
Yeah.
Completely unaffected by it. But they also had the money and the means to be in an insulated area. It was just crazy.
I chose to leave in the middle of it and see how the rest of society was.
And you're not originally from California.
Yeah, I'm from Kansas City. So I went, after law school, I went to New York City for 10 years. And I was not practicing immigration there, but I did. The minute I got to LA, I started. So, that was, when you move from New York to California, I was shocked at the amount of at the use of exploitative, in my opinion, labor. And you don't see that in other states. I have no, like Kansas, New York and stuff. The economy of California, at least Southern California, it seems that a lot of the sectors are largely built on people who don't have status, and they're not able to bargain their wages, and it's like no one wants to acknowledge this, and it's like, okay, this guys. You don't get 4 guys towel drying your car in another state for that price. What is, I noticed if I grew up in it, if I was born and grew up in it, I might be oblivious to it, but I was like,
oh, I knew. And I was talking to a client years ago about this. And I said, I think the thing is that the reason no one wants to solve this problem with immigration is because the people at the top don't benefit. The businesses get to use pressure to leverage. Well, if you don't do this, I'll just call the authorities. And then next thing you know, boom, gone, right? So there's intimidation, right? They can go through and pay under the table in cash, or they could pay, they don't have to pay the same wage. There's a lot of this gray, and I don't call it gray area. It's not a gray area, but there's a lot of areas where that's ethically and morally corrupt way of doing business. But if you were to resolve it, what would also happen is then those businesses can't survive because the margins aren't high enough to actually sustain. I mean, I don't know what the average, what the income is now in California, what do they call it? Minimum wage pay. I think in certain counties it's much higher than others, but you're not going to be able to sustain some of these businesses with paying $20 an hour.
Right.
And so this is the other thing, if you want your same product, you're going to have to pay for it because the cost of doing business is much higher. And so this is where I say the reason nobody really wants it to have to do is because it's going to fuck with the entire system. Am I incorrect on that? I mean, you're the one who
I think it's right. I think this is actually the most interesting, to me, this is the most interesting part of the immigration policy debate. It's the one no one talks about. It's not, there's a long-standing feature of the immigration system that has nothing to do with the Trump administration or the last 20 years. It's that we have sectors of our economy in the hotel industry, in the food processing, but particularly in agriculture and in construction, but in agriculture, where people don't have status and they're exploited. There's an exploitative feature of the U.S. economy. And the dairy industry, let's say in Wisconsin, I've seen reports that it's upwards of 80 or 90% are unauthorized, right? So you can imagine what they're able to negotiate in terms of that. So
and it's not like they can unionize.
So the thing is that how did we get here, and why is it still like this? No one talks about this. This is, so you have a system that, okay, if we snapped our fingers and said no more use of unauthorized labor in California right now, in my opinion, LA would be in chaos within hours. Within not even a day, not 2 days, but within hours, it would be a complete breakdown.
I think people would be surprised of how much of their daily life is massively affected positively from unauthorized workers. Yeah. And the reason I say positively is the things that they benefit from.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are only due to this policy. And my question to those people who go, wait, I don't like this, I would beg the question, are you willing to pay the going rate for the same service, for the same product at a much higher fee? And this is where I think everyone gets quiet and they get murky, because I don't think people want to pay more money. They're too comfortable paying what they're paying for.
It's the science behind it and the economic. I go and I visit places like Kansas and Texas, and I don't see so much. I'm not saying like in some restaurant kitchens where I'm not privy that it doesn't, but I'm saying like I see not like California, so apparently we're paying for it here in Texas, in large measures. So what's going on over there? And I feel like it's not a good thing for society to, number one, to degrade people like that. And you have in this country, you have a quote legalized second class, underclass. When I say legalized, I don't mean they have papers. I'm saying like there is one class of people, and then there's another class. The other class is an underclass, and it's kind of set in stone. Yeah. Everyone else has papers. And those people are a significant part of the economy. So how does that affect people? And, people start relying on them, and then they lose motivation. And, you go to the Midwest and you see upbeat kids from the, inner city to the suburbs, employed behind registers at business, and I don't see that so much in LA. I see, I'm saying, I think perhaps that sector of the economy, you know, the upper high school age, the young college age, I don't see that motivation. Maybe it got taken, maybe they've lost it because you can pay people who are unauthorized less. You know, I think these things have a psychological effect, and I just don't think it's good to you know, to exploit people. You know, I just don't, it's not where you want to be. It's bad psychology, right? So.
Oh, I mean, because clearly what we're talking about is, you know, it's a political divide of what policies people feel are the right solution to this, you know, tangled knot, right? I think we all agree that we don't want anyone to be.
Yeah.
I think instinctively the good nature of us goes, well, I don't want anyone taken advantage of. I don't know anyone goes, yeah, you know what? Let's go take advantage
I
of
hope
these people.
so.
I'm erring on the side of like more of an optimistic outlook.
Yeah.
But I think nobody would want anyone that they know to be in a situation where they're getting taken advantage of. That's my own personal belief. I could be absolutely wildly wrong, but I don't think people want that. The question is, I don't think we agree as a society of which path is the path forward to restoring dignity and no taking advantage in that workplace.
I think that's right. I think the first and foremost problem is there's actually neither party has ever in my time on this earth offered any kind of a proper focus on this. Much less a solution. So this is, we've had many Democratic administrations and Republican administrations in the last,
20 years.
Yeah, 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
So no one talks about this. They talk about, there's too many people coming in on asylum.
We need to get them out.
But it's like, but what about the people that are here? There's 11 million that, a lot of them are subjected to exploitative conditions, and it does harm the economy. It does harm other people's wages, that are around. So no one wants, there's people from all sides of the political equation. They benefit from this. You can go and in 2016, at least, you get a housekeeper in LA to clean your house for 4 or 5 hours for $100.
Yeah.
Good luck in Kansas City.
Yeah.
But that's not gonna, it's like, that's interesting. So what else, so some gardener comes to your house for $30 as your back and front and the whole, no.
Do you think could it be the fact that the proximity to Mexico with California and Arizona and California, Arizona, New Mexico, and parts of Texas, like the closer you get to those bordering states, because we're growing up in California, the majority of the people who were doing the house cleaning, they weren't unauthorized immigration people from, like, I don't know, the Czech Republic. It was a lot of people who were like, there's a reason why everyone says like, oh, well, it's really great to know Spanish. Look, growing up in California.
Yeah.
They're like, you grow up learning Spanish words, not because you want to learn Spanish words. You just know that, like, oh, that's agua. Like, you just know that. Like, everything is written in English and then it's written in Spanish right on underneath. Do you think that the proximity may be sent to like Missouri or Kansas or Wisconsin or like Ohio? It's so far removed from the point of entry into the country that you have less people. So it's like a supply and demand, right? If there's a large supply and the demand, but they don't have to pay the wages because there's somebody else who would do it for less.
I think that a large amount of people end up in California through other states that are not as inviting to that, having that be a part of their economy.
Okay.
And they feel a refuge.
Okay.
And to being there. Some of it might have to do with weather, but I would say largely, I would be surprised to learn that if a significant amount of those people in California came through the Mexican-California border. I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't believe that's as porous and as long as the, the Southwestern and the Texas, border. So
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm asking because I don't know this.
I think that it's a great question, and my understanding is they come in through these states, and it's more porous, and that's how it's been over decades and decades.
Yeah,
and they feel safer.
Coming through here.
Well, they feel more safe than heading to places like California or places like that. Yeah. For whatever reason. So, and then they end up, in their safety, they end up in this disposition. And so, to have if you offered a solution and it brought and you ended that, people's lives are seemingly going to be more expensive, right? In LA, the business owner has to pay the dishwasher more. You have to pay more to your gardener. You have to pay more to your pool cleaner. You have to pay more to your, it's not so. Maybe people get somewhat lazy and they talk a lot of talk, but they don't walk the walk then, and things they're not addressed. This is my assessment. So what is one solution that it might be the Trump administration or it might be a Democratic administration, but it doesn't look like it's any administration, is to go, hey, look, a practical solution that a society might accept is, have zero illegal immigration, have nobody coming to the border that's not processed, and all these existing people, if they've been here for like a year or two, give them status. So in return, close the border, because if you have a border and you have an immigration system, why are you having people come in without papers? So I think I'm not saying that that's the best way to do it, but I'm saying that might be the only politically
correct way.
Palpable. Okay. Palpable. So that way that you have people on the enforcement side saying, I could live with that if no more come in like that. So
what you're saying, let me say, I'm understanding your speech here because I'm doing multitasking.
Please.
I'm listening and cutting here. Is almost like an amnesty project, right? Like process. Like, hey, you've all been here for a year or so. You have no crimes, no record. Just you're just doing the best you can, being a great citizen. But we're going to close down the border 100%. Like we're not going to allow anybody else in here.
Quid pro quo. Yeah, it's like, you do this for me, I'll do this for you.
Like, well, everyone who's here is here, but no one can come in.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the way you could get it passed.
Yeah. Well, I remember during the 2000 election of Gore versus Bush.
Yeah.
That was the Republican platform, was an amnesty platform, which was kind of...
Reagan did an amnesty.
I was going to say Reagan started that whole process. And this idea of amnesty was really more of a Republican origin, if I'm correct on this. And then now it's like very much shifted not to the Republican Party is not an amnesty friendly Reagan ideals on this. Am I correct on this? Because I'm not paying too much attention.
George Bush Jr. didn't have the votes to get it. The Republicans in his party said no.
Okay.
So it seems like only Republicans have the votes to. You need Republicans to make this happen.
Well, you need both parties.
You need both, but you definitely need. And so the Trump administration would be more like this, but you're going to lose certain sectors, and then you have people that really question the need for any immigration.
I've heard that same debate. If you stay on X long enough, you're going to get exposed to shit you never even knew existed.
Yeah.
So when you got started as an immigration attorney, you started during the Obama administration.
Yeah.
What term? First, second term?
Right at the beginning.
His first term. Okay, cool. So you have done immigration attorney, and you started doing more asylum, right?
Yeah, but that was then.
And that was then. That was during the first 2 terms of Obama. And then you got Trump term 1.
Yeah.
Were you still in California doing?
I was in LA, yeah.
Okay.
And then at that point, I started phasing out.
Okay, and they started phasing out of that.
Yeah.
And then we had Biden, and you were in Texas for Biden.
I was in LA and in Texas and Kansas City, yeah.
Okay, so you were in 3 places.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So the reason I'm trying to get the backstory straight,
yeah, please,
is because I wanted to know, as given that like it's your profession, what were like the key changes from the policy of the administrations and how it affected how you were conducting your own business? Because yes, you are helping people, but it is a business.
Yeah.
Like, there's probably things you could do that now you can't do. Or there's things that you couldn't do, but now you can do. Or did nothing fucking change at all?
I know, absolutely. I think during the Obama administration, definitely it was, I felt like I could do a lot more with regard to those in asylum and the detention system.
Yes.
In the removal system. So it was called, and it was, it was palpable. And then it was a real sea change when the first Trump administration, it just, they had a heavy priority in changing things around, and it was a good time to exit for me, that sphere of things. It definitely, they took away the niceties, so to speak. They weren't so interested in the niceties. So a lot of my work, I used to be on the phone or on the emails with DHS counsel regarding someone's case. And so, that stuff wasn't really happening too many months into his administration. The first time in 2016, 17.
Yeah.
And so you had a real...
I remember when that happened. Everyone was so surprised.
Yeah.
I was not surprised. I got into a huge argument with a buddy of mine. He was out in Pennsylvania running the Clinton campaign out there. And I was in Pennsylvania in like the Rust Belt area. I'm like, have you left Philadelphia? Because all I see is Trump signs. He's like, oh, those things don't matter. Like, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, and I was traveling all in the Midwest teaching haircutting. And I'm going to places I would never like, I'm going to go vacation there, And I was like, and I remember that night, my wife and I looked at her, she goes, I can't believe it. I'm like, I totally believe it. I'm like, everywhere I went, I kept seeing this shit. And I kept telling people, I'm like, don't be surprised. They're like, no, are you sure? I'm like, oh yeah, I really think so. I was actually in Vegas the day before the elections. We didn't have ChatGPT at the time to consult, but I was like going to put money on the election. Turns out you can't, it's super illegal. But apparently I had a client who I didn't know had a gambling problem, and I told the story later. And he's like, oh, I have a bookie in London. And the odds were 500 to 1 of Trump winning. So if I had put $1,000, I would have made like half.
The 2016.
I would have made $500,000, which is what I was going to do, because everyone told me I was on my gut. Ever since I started paying attention to politics in like the early 90s, the first Clinton thing, I've been able to call every election like to 100% accuracy of like who's going to win, and even like who the candidate might be. Even with my friends who like went to school for political science, I'm like, they're not going to win. They're like, how do you know? I'm like, I think it's because I just deal with people. So I'm like looking at it from a completely different lens of like human behavior versus like anything else. Yeah. And I just, if there was a time machine, Arslan, I would go back to that moment.
Wager that.
I would wager that bet.
Yeah.
Call my client who I didn't know who had a gambling problem, had a bookie in London. I'd be like, bro, I have $1,000. Put it on red. Or black or whatever it was. Yeah.
I think that, look, there was a night and day change in enforcement mechanism. So I felt back then, and what we saw, and just the tone of the agency at that time. But at the end of the day, those things come and go, and they make a lot of news.
Yeah.
But what doesn't make the news is that we have this, for 60, 70 years, we have this whole feature of our economy where people live in exploitative labor. And so you have some people coming in and out of the detention and removal system, and you have some people get a process in asylum, and that we speak about that, but what doesn't change is the thing that we were speaking about earlier.
Policy.
That there's been millions, upwards of 11 or 12 million people for a long time that are just a feature of the economy. So what is being done about that? So that, that doesn't have noise. So I find that my advocacy and my attention is, if any, is better focused on that sector. Because, I let other people who are more skilled and deep in the trenches focus on the detention and the courts and the asylum. Mm-hmm. And the asylum system, I would like to just shed a little light to the rest of the people in this country and the world that this is a feature. I don't need to say too much about it. Did you know? And there's a lot of Republicans and Christians and Democrats and whatever that would like people to know, that this is how this is. Let's talk about this. If you talk about it, if you don't talk about it, then how do you change it? I'm not saying you have to say do this or do that. I'm saying hey, look, it's something is bleeding over there. Did you look? It's bleeding.
Yeah, let's fix it.
I don't have to say let's fix it. Did you know something's bleeding over there? Yeah. Look over there. So, and I think a lot of people would. I think a lot of people are that's not very Christian. That's not the kind of I don't like that as a business person. I don't like that as a capitalist. I don't like that as a humanitarian. I just don't think that's good. I don't want that. I want everybody to be employed at certain wages, because, if I have to compete in Texas, then I have to compete in California. I think there's a large segments of this population that just are not interested in having that being a feature of our economy. If they knew, if someone told them, look, the dairy industry is like this, this is these sectors of this agricultural, mechanism are like this. I think that is, now we're addressing I think 7 or 8 million of those 11 million that are continuously here are in the economy. Yeah. Without employment authorization. So, that's for a long time. So let's somebody start talking about that, because of the things there's things that are happening with change of administrations that, it was, whether it was Bush Jr. and then Obama and then, then blah, 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 blah. Yeah, those things make a lot of news, but why doesn't it make news that why do we have people continuously coming in over decades and decades? We have obviously our technical intelligence with drones, and you don't need walls. Our technical intelligence with drones and high, and Palantir and cameras, over the year, with very long distance cameras. Why is there something in the mechanism that, regardless of which administration it is, that has people coming in, so that they can then become part of this system, and it benefits people on both sides of the political spectrum, whichever suburb they live in,
I mean, you said it would benefit both sides, but I feel like you could take the same thing with healthcare. If you actually got people totally healthy and not needing the system, then there's a whole bunch of people who also, what I'm saying? Oh, cool.
There's all kinds of physicians that are Democrats and Republicans that would freak.
Yeah, they'd be like, wait. I need these because I need them because they don't want to actually treat the root cause. They just want to treat symptoms. And I feel we're you could almost say that it's a sick care system. It actually pays better to be sick. I remember my dad was doing a life insurance thing, and they go, okay, all right, sir. So what are your medications? And my dad just turned 70, and he's like, I'm on no medications. They go, you're not on anything? He's like, no. And they're like, what? And they just could not believe him at all, because so many. They said we maybe encounter somebody who's not on anything at your age every so many years, because so many people have so many medical issues that they just need an alarming amount of pharmaceuticals to make sure that they're just able to like wake up, live, and go to bed.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the system that they want, because there's always a client, there's always a customer, there's always money coming in. You know, it's like it's a system that benefits itself by being corrupt, in the sense that it doesn't actually treat the source of it. And that's what I feel like immigration is. Immigration is like, if you treat it, then what are the left and the right going to argue about? They solved it. Now you can't use people emotionally as political pawns to get your vote. And when you get in office, what's going to happen? Nothing. Because how many presidents have we had in our lifetime?
Yeah.
How many administrations? And the problem is the problem that we addressed earlier, that nobody actually wants to address the problem.
This is the long-standing problem. This is the greatest problem of the immigration system, the one that I'm interested in. This is, in my opinion, this is the long-standing problem. And have we come to the point where people are from whichever political party are just relying on this exploitative system to because they got comfortable with it and they benefit from it, and it benefits their business, it benefits the labor they can hire for their to take care of their homes and their businesses and stuff. Have people, how lazy does this make people when it's there? So do people get too comfortable? And so until and what effect does that have on the rest of the economy and people's motivation and young kids to enter the workforce, before they have degrees, or whether they have degrees, it does have an effect on wages, for both the migrant and for the, people in the local economy. So,
I mean, I just remember having friends who mowed lawns, or delivered newspapers by bike, or they worked at the car wash.
I don't feel like there's much of an incentive in LA for a young kid to mow a lawn. Like, I feel like, it's, what I'm saying? Like in Kansas or in Texas, it'd be like, I can, but I feel an exploitative economy for migrant workers in Southern California. What motivation does that leave for like a 17-year-old to mow the lawn?
Oh yeah, no. And by the way, let's just use Los Angeles County.
Yeah.
I could extrapolate it to another thing, is that the entire entertainment industry is very much the same thing. It's all about taking advantage of people anyways. Like, you have an entire ecosystem from top to bottom of taking advantage of people. And we've all heard about the Harvey Weinstein shit. You know what I'm saying? It's the same mentality. It's the same idea. It's just it looks different.
Yeah, people, if you go to other countries and, you can see what people have relied upon, that they got lazy, it's not to say that it's, that things are perfect elsewhere. It's just to say, it's not healthy.
Oh,
it's not healthy. It's as a, our biosphere is it's not healthy, so.
Well, here's my question real quick. By the way, we're pretty much done. I have a question about being an immigration attorney and law in general in the world of artificial intelligence, which I refuse to call it artificial, because there's nothing artificial to me. It's assisted intelligence at its current status.
Yeah.
It's there to really help assist people with mundane, boring tasks. And I think that there's I was talking to some people who know far greater about this than I do, and they are like, no, it's going to be completely like self-aware very soon. They said right now we're at one stage. How does AI, how would it affect a lawyer? And like, because the story I'm telling myself about AI in law is that if you become part of a large law firm and you want to work your way up to become partner, let's say you do trial lawyer and you're doing that whole thing, the junior lawyers and like the freshman class of that law firm are doing the research, they're doing all this stuff, right? But when you can task one person to like do the research through AI to go through and pull so much, as these things are getting much better at pulling deep research, is there going to be a need to hire like 10 or 12 people all the time? Or are you going to be hiring less people to do that same job? And then at some point you create this imbalance where you have all of these lawyers And then they're going to eventually retire, and you're not going to have enough people to take the place. Kind of like the whole system with doctors. It became so expensive and arduous to become an MD. We have a whole bunch of PAs.
Yeah.
Like, is there going to be this imbalance at some point with that?
I think that with the professions that are not hands-on, well, even medicine is hands-on, such as like haircutting is, an electrician, but for like accounting and law, it's a greater question. I think it's a more immediate effect, for the overall industry. What I'm seeing in my field is that is that with regard to use of a secretary or executive assistant or what you call that, if one knows how to talk with diction, that's where you, not conversation but diction, that's where you press the microphone on the like the chat GPT, and you speak to it like a human being, and you don't filter your speech.
Yeah. You
have a pretty good executive assistant. Let it do your emails. Hey, yeah, this case that, that was that, and she was this, she was that. Send her an email. So you have at least that. Now, for purposes of law in general, what I've seen in immigration law, it can create a conversation of ideas for a particular matter, so that you can go and you can look at the research and you can go figure out the answers. I think it's pretty scary if one is trying to get the answers, from it. Not to say that it's not a good idea. I mean, people use H&R Block for their dollar to get the taxes, and they're like, so that they're putting their money where their mouth is. But so I think at a certain time it will become so good that I foresee it will be so good that it will replace a lot of lawyers, but a lot of law and immigration, and probably lots of other fields that I'm not thinking about, is policy related and how offices run. Well, it's a prediction as to, how this office and these people in this bureaucracy will implement and what's been happening and what's going on, rather than just the way things are written. So there's a human side of things that people gauge. But I think that we can predict a lot of these jobs may go the wayside.
I mean, I imagine you're going to need, because unless the rules of court change where you're able to have an AI lawyer represent and talk for you as a defendant or a plaintiff or something like that, I can't imagine that happening. Yes, you're going to have this weird.
You might go in without one.
You could.
That's what it is. You might go in without one. That if you have somebody by your side, again, it has to be a lawyer. But if you don't, you might be like, you know what? And I've had people present me with things. Hey, Arslan, I want to hire you for this, but this is what I did on my own, with ChatGPT. And I look at it, I was like, oh my God.
So it's not that great.
It's not, but if you know how to use it, I think it's great. And I think that lawyers that know how to use it and embrace it can take their service to the next level, as any profession.
That's why I call it assisted intelligence.
That's right.
It's not, these things aren't going to make you smarter. They're going to make you more productive in its current form.
It's a heightened Google search is what it is. It's not, there's nothing intelligent about it.
No, actually, it reminds me of how Google used to be. You could ask Google a question and you would actually get answers. But now, because of the way they do the algorithms and the paid searches and where you want to go through in your ranking and the SEO, like, I am always using chat for stuff. Like, I have a camera question. I used to be able to find comparison pages and all sorts of stuff. Now it's like page 7 before I actually get to like a cool Reddit thread about something. Or I can go, hey, chat, I'm looking for the difference between these 2 cameras and these settings. Or I have this camera. I want to make it look like this. What are the best options? What websites? What tutorials? Are there any Reddit threads? What are the YouTube channels that talk about these specific things? Because the algorithms are just so fucked that they just kind of keep pumping the same thing. I've been complaining about algorithms a lot.
That's
like Netflix. I'm going to use Netflix as an example, or any of these streaming services. My wife and I, we ended up watching John Wick because I had never watched it. My wife had never watched it. And so many people were talking about it at one point. So we said, you know what? They're all done. They've come out with every John Wick movie. Let's watch one John Wick movie every night. So we did. We finished all the John Wick movies.
How many are there?
I think there's like 3.
Okay.
Maybe 4. I'm not sure.
Sure.
Our streaming service, after that binge of one, all we got were these action
Right.
movies. And I'm like, that's the last thing I want. What I wish, and I would love it to do, would be like when you used to go to a Blockbuster and you'd ask the person at the counter, you say, hey, I just finished John Wick. It's like, oh, you want some more action movies? You're like, no, I'm over it. I want like a dark comedy. And they're gonna go, oh, I know what's going on. Or what used to happen, which now will never happen, which is since we can stream everything is unlimited.
Yeah.
So you're never sold out of that streaming movie. I remember going to Blockbuster and be like, oh, I want to watch The Mummy. Well, it just came out today and we're sold out. And then somebody's like, well, have you seen this movie? Because it's like like a B movie or an indie flick. And there's so many great movies that became my favorite movie due to the fact that the movie I went to go rent was sold out.
Yeah.
So like, I'm always thinking people like, oh, there's no great content. There's no great this. And I'm like, I think there's a whole lot of it. It's just getting buried because you don't have the Blockbuster person going, you know what you might like? You want to watch Hunger Games? You want to see something crazier? How about you watch Battle Royale?
Yeah.
And people are like, what's Battle Royale? I'm like, I don't know how Hunger Games didn't get sued over Battle Royale. Have you heard of Battle Royale?
No, not yet.
It's a hyper-violent Japanese movie.
Okay.
Hugely influenced the violence of Kill Bill, which is a great movie. So I'm always thinking like AI is great, but like it has its limitations. And so far as a hairdresser, all it's doing for me is I could do a video tutorial, talk my way through what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Send the transcript to AI. AI does what? It puts it in the steps that I talked about it. It helps give me a step-by-step that I can go through and hand off to an attendee or a student at a class. I can say, okay, here's the steps. You can follow along. Like that used to take me hours of having to like write it down and figure out the words, but like, and remember what I did. And now I can just do that. Like I look at it as AI. If you're a creative person or you're like an entrepreneurial mind, AI is like the biggest hack ever.
Technological advancement. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And but are the education systems that our children in, are they promoting creative thinking and creative like design? Or is it, like I'm thinking in an AI future, like if you're going to be a lawyer and you're going to be doing something, you have to have this creative advantage because from my understanding, court cases are very rarely ever open and shut based off the law. It's about what was set as the precedent with before. So you have to get really creative about finding cases that ruled in one way to be creative. But is AI that clever yet? Or is that so where the human ingenuity is going, hey, I have this idea, blah, 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 blah. Like the way the dude would do it from Suits. He'd be like, oh, there's one court case that I read about and it's completely different situation, but how it was ruled is relevant to the court case that you're currently going on. And so that's where I'm always curious about, like, where's AI going to go with that? And is the human creativity spirit, is that the one thing that AI will never be able to take away? And if you're smart and you like law and you're creative, are you going to always outperform somebody who just is super book smart on this? Because learning law sounds like it's anybody can learn law. That's what it sounds like. Yeah. But it's applying law. That's where like the art of law comes in. Is how do you apply this? How do you benefit your client, right? Am I wrong on this?
No, this is good.
So, in your world, how can you use your creativity of understanding the law and like how you can go through and manipulate it? Because all law is about manipulation of, well, this happened and that happened because these things happen. We think that this should be the outcome. Or am I massively ruining what a lawyer does?
Well, you present to the authority, that this, that this is, it's easier if it's actually if that's actually how it is. It's like if the precedent actually supports you all the way up. If not, you kind of maybe try to present it the other way. I don't do this line of work, those kind of court cases, but that is a feature of the, you try to persuade the judge that, that it's like this. And if it's been more like this, then, it's easier if you get to just go with the flow, right? And say that to the judge. Yeah, there's a persuasive element.
Okay.
There's a persuasive element to things. So if authority has been on your side clearly for many years, you have an easier time
to do it.
Time with it. Yeah, sure. Yeah. I think that people should embrace this, and they should be aware that it's not, there's nothing intelligent about it. Like you said, that it is something that that you should embrace and so you can enhance how you serve other people. And so you can make sure that all the I's and the T's are dotted and crossed, and at the least beyond other things, and make sure everything is addressed, in its totality. Now, in terms of we're coming from a place outside of law, we're coming from a place where, is it a bad thing? We're coming from a place where people used to sit home mindless, and they would go and they would just flip channels, right? And they're like 130 channels, and they go, okay, so is it worse that people now look at their phones and they're more selective on what it's called doom scrolling? Of that is that worse than somebody mindlessly? I'm saying there is more content control looking at your Instagram or whatever, if you go now in the future, you're going to sit down and instead of thinking about John Wick or this or your kids, you're going to sit down and go like, you know what? Hey, AI. Hey, Susie's the AI bot right on your floor. You know what? You know what I feel like watching tonight? Let's suppose that Return of the Jedi, I want the sequel right after that. I want to know what Luke and Leia did. And I want to know what Han, I want to see the movie that hasn't been made yet. Can do it like that and make sure it's more like the Lucas style than the Disney style. Like you're going to create your own movie. Sitting down, you're going to tell, and it's going to make the movie right there.
It could.
That's good. That is coming. So you're going to, and people who are not as motivated are going to be like, just find me something.
Yeah.
Like that. But people who are more into it, perhaps like you, are going to give it a lot of direction in 5 minutes.
Oh yeah.
And you're going to see a great movie. That's coming. Is that evil, or is that a lot better than sitting there mindlessly surfing? Oh, I hope something good comes on in the next hour and 30 minutes while I'm surfing. And so maybe I'll watch something before I go to bed instead of just surfing. No, you have content control. So you have, as a creator, as an artist,
because you are an artist, you're a musician, so this is relevant as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so you have content control now. I find myself making more content now. I was just making music content for many years. And then I have an immigration comedy that I had these, there's a humanitarian dance, but I had this script for the longest time. Yeah. And then somebody in the industry in LA, he goes, well, your script is complete. Now copyright it and find $100K in investment from various figures. Yeah. I was like, that sounds really boring. I'm going to shelve this. So AI comes along, what they call AI, and the video generation went through the roof.
Totally.
In October.
Yes.
And I start seeing people who have no animation or any kind of video talent making short movies on my Facebook. And I was like, I'm making the preview.
Oh, cool.
So I made the preview, the promo to this immigration comedy with this. So all of a sudden I'm making video content. Okay. And then I start doing side projects where I like comedy, so I'm making other characters. Yeah. I'm making animated funny clips and not too, I'm making more content now than I ever have because look, I can play music with the guitar because I trained myself to do that, but I didn't train to do video, And so the technical part of it is being taken care of by what they call AI, by that. So now I have the things that we talked about with regard to policy, I have a preview to a feature film that brings the purpose of it is to bring the mainstream, the masses from all faiths and all sides into the theater, if we still have that, and it shows them a little bit. By the way, did you know a sector of your economy is this? Because maybe the protagonist is driving down the road with a business guy and he looks over and there's workers in fields. But not much more than that, because we want people to come in and be entertained, but we want to start alluding to the fact that, the whole of America actually includes this too. And it's not, it's something, let's be comfortable about it. Let's talk about it. So, but all of a sudden I'm making this, I'm making video. And when you create something for the first time, as you well know, in a particular medium. Oh yeah. When it first comes back to you, you're like, you feel like you feel like a you're like, wow, I made that.
I know the feeling. It's like when the first time I was in a recording studio and they go, all right, you get the band mic'd up and everyone's doing the independent line checks and sound. And then they go, all right, now play your song. And then you play the one song and you have like the scratch vocal and everybody's in their weird isolation booths. And they go, all right, come in and check it out. And you hear that scratch track and you're like, oh my gosh, we made that. We sound so cool. We sound so big. We sound so this. And that is what keeps me going. It's like, I'll take a photo of something. I'm like, oh.
It's a very special feeling.
You take this, it's right out of the camera. It looks amazing. And in my mind, I already know like how I'm going to manipulate the color tones and processing and Lightroom. But I'm like, man, this shot, like I did it. And when you get those, I think it keeps you motivated to want to keep creating more. Yeah. You want to kind of get better. How can I improve? How can I get more of these shots? I just took 1,000 shots and I got 20 useful ones. How can I make those 20 turn into 200 if I only take 300 shots? Like that's how I look at it. I'm like always testing myself with like, what can I do better?
Yeah, that's right.
More and faster. I'm in a competition of one right against me. I'm either winning or losing. If you ask me, I've lost every single battle. Yeah. Because I think there's always something better. But I don't know if like the youth and the future of America, of teenagers and all that really care about, are they wanting to better that? Or are they okay with like AI generated slop songs? Like, oh, that's good enough.
There's going to be mediocre stuff. There's going to be people who embrace it and use it to their fullest. And you're going to, so here, I would much rather focus my time if I learn a technical trade to it be with a musical instrument and my voice. Now, I'm a writer, right? So I write, let's say I'm a writer of film. But I'm not so interested in learning the technicals of animation and camera work and live action, right? Yeah. But that doesn't take away from my being a writer. No. So before AI, where does that leave me? That leaves me being just a writer that maybe nobody reads of a script, or what a lot of people do, they become a writer and an administrator, a PR person. Mm-hmm. So it's all time, right? Yeah. Your time's going somewhere. So maybe some people now, they're less PR and administrative and fundraisers now, and they're putting that's not something I wanted to be interested in, but I take a little bit of time and I have AI help me with video generation, and I don't learn that trade. I'm still the writer. Yeah. You can, as an artist now, as a creator, you have the ability to publicize and share work across all mediums, even if you didn't learn the trade which allows it to be presented in this physical plane.
Yeah, there's no excuses now.
Yeah, there's no excuses now. So you can have one, have one trade where you go all the way, where you go and you learn the trade of hair cutting and you create on the person's scalp, or as a musician with a guitar. But if there's other things that you've done, whether it's in music, film, or whatever, in photography, you can just be the originator of the content and share it now. Yeah. You have that, and that should give license to a lot of people. And it gave license to me, as somebody who wants to make a feature film live action, with regard to immigration. But also I started doing a lot of comedy sketches. Sometimes late at night, I send my friends, maybe people I send them a 15-second skit making fun of them that I made a cartoon. Oh, that's because funny. I know how to prompt it on Sora. I'm like, I don't know how to tell you this to your face, so I'm gonna get. Oh man, I'm gonna make fun of you as a cartoon.
Oh god, that's that. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I always feel that like the more quirky somebody is, and the more like defining characteristics and traits that they do, it creates the easiest way to like rip into somebody.
That's right.
What was it? David Asbury goes, hey, did they just try to rip me off on Saturday Night Live? He's like, and I was like, man, if you're doing something and then Saturday Night Live comes and like imitates you, you've made it.
It's gold.
It's great. Like you've done it. Like you've now like, you've come to it. Like, even though it may hurt initially, you're like, nah, they took notice. I'm on the map.
That's right.
If somebody need your services and they're in Texas, is this something that you want to promote your business, or you want to kind of keep it like hush hush?
You can go to, I have a website and you can reach out and we can see if we're a good fit.
All right, cool. So, I'll put that in the show notes then.
Yeah, but by all means. And let's create more. And let's know that we're being supported by technological advancement, to get our stuff out there. Yeah. And
And then anything on the last words on unauthorized immigration?
Let's become more holistic as a society and and accept that there's a certain part of our economy in certain sectors that is run a certain way. And once we accept that more, and then we can converse about it. But it's premature to talk about solutions and this and that if people are being like, well, okay, I didn't see that. I'm being like, so.
I know. That's what I've been feeling forever. I'm like, nobody wants to have the hard conversation, which is the system is broken for this.
Yeah.
There's a massive fucking problem. No one wants to talk about it, but everyone loves to talk about it when they need a vote. And they have a solution and they never fucking deliver.
Yeah.
So that's my closing note on that. But
there you go. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Arslan. I appreciate
Great haircut.
it. All right. Adios later.
Thank you. In this country, you have a, quote, legalized second class. When I say legalized, I don't mean they have papers. There is one class of people, and then there's another class. The other class is an underclass, and it's kind of set in stone. Everyone else has papers. And those people are a significant part of the economy. You go to the Midwest, and you see upbeat kids employed behind registers at business, I don't see that so much in LA. That was, I mean, when you move from New York to California, I was shocked at the amount of at the use of exploitative, in my opinion, labor. And I mean, you don't see that in other states. I have no, like Kansas, New York, and stuff. The economy of California, at least Southern California, seems a lot of the sectors are largely built on people who don't have status, and they're not able to bargain their wages, and it's like no one wants to acknowledge this, and it's like